Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 453, Tortuga, $21.99.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by Game Toppers, LLC. We talk about Game Toppers all of the time because we genuinely love the products that they make. They make fantastic tables, mats, drink holders, dice towers, chip holders, game bags, and more recently, they've added mat holders and leg kits. Head over to GameToppersLLC.com and take a look at all of their awesome products. Make sure to check out all of the Game Topper bundles on the website designed to save you some money. And while you're there, go ahead and bookmark the page and return to it often, because one thing about Berkey is he is always looking to the future and looking for ways to innovate and come up with new products to make our lives as gamers better. So keep your eye out for awesome new products coming soon. GameToppersLLC.com.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Nathan Howard.
I'm Dave Holliday.
I am Andy Holliday.
And I'm Douglas Stewart.
Go to our website, meeplenation.com. We have links to our blogs. These blogs have produced some very interesting points of view and discussion. Each of us and our guest bloggers take some time to write down some thoughts and some feelings that we have about the gaming community and the board gaming hobby in general. We also have links to every episode that we've released up to this point. We have links to our Instagram feed. We have links to our bios, so if you wanted to get a little bit more knowledge on us. Also, if you ever want to reach out to us, let us know how we're doing, let us know what we missed or anything like that. Reach out to us at meeplenation@gmail.com. And also on our webpage is a link to our Patreon site. We truly appreciate those who support our podcast. It's humbling for us to receive that support, and we appreciate that tremendously. If you too so desire to give the podcast some support, please follow the Patreon link on our website.
This week, we conclude our discussion of pirate games with Tortuga, $21.99. In Tortuga $21.99, this is a pirate game, but it's a little bit different. Most of the time when we think of pirate games, it's out the open sea. Generally, a few years back. $21.99 obviously is not a few years back, and as such, it's a pirate game in space. You each take the role of a spaceship captain. Your objective is to become the most powerful captain and unite all sectors and clans of Tortuga under your authority. Throughout the game, you can upgrade your ship and hire new crew members.
The cards represent your ship's upgrades.
Explore and conquer different sectors of the planet, fight space beasts, and board other captains' ships, and all of the above increases your influence and helps in reaching your goal. First captain to achieve 15 influence wins the game immediately. However, if someone happens to conquer Tortuga itself, that triggers a different game end. If somebody ends the game in that way, everyone else will get one extra turn to try and make sure they have the most points. One final round, but it's everybody except for that person gets one extra turn. If you're going to be the one that end the game, better hope that you have enough points to withstand everybody else having one more turn. The kick to that is that they can't take certain actions that are generally some of the ones that give you the most points.
So we first played this game at BGGCon 2021. This was a new Kickstarter. I had just gotten my pledge right before we left. I hadn't opened it yet, but while we were in Dallas, there was a copy of this in the BGG library. We were able to bust this out. Andy, Dave, and I played it. Doug just recently got his first play.
You guys actually got to play it before me because I was a couple of days late. When I got there, you guys were excited about it to show it to me. Y'all got to play it twice there. I got to play it once.
The setup of this game has these large hex tiles. If you have a copy that isn't warped, that's awesome. Congratulations. My copy is warped.
We should talk about that. Yeah, not just warped, Nathan, but severely warped. Some of the worst warping I've actually ever seen in a board game. It was one of the things that I noticed right out of the gate, which is really unfortunate. Overall, I think this game has a really nice production value. I think that the components are nice. The little plastic ships are fun to look at, and everything seemed to be a really high quality product. I'm pretty sure that it's the glue that they used to hold those dual layer cardboard pieces together, but they were in like a full arc.
And it didn't really look like that while it was in the box, but as soon as you put it on the table next to each other, very much a distraction from the game.
I remember the game that we played in Dallas, it did not seem to be warped.
I don't
nearly as
remember
bad
it
as
being
this
warped
was.
at all.
I don't think it's every copy. I don't know what happened.
It could be the high altitude and the altitude change of where we live as opposed to where the game was produced and packed. We have a drier climate here, so that could be affecting the glue that way. Either way, I don't want to say it distracts from the game, but it definitely distracted from the game.
It's always a little disappointing when you pull stuff out of the box and you see stuff like that.
Yeah. You lay out the tiles in a grid depending on the number of players. Tortuga is always in the middle, and that's where all the players are going to begin the game. And from there, you'll be able to branch out to the trading post and turret tiles. Each of these sectors you can try to conquer, and once you take control of a sector, you're going to gain one of the sector control tokens, which has a point value of 1, 2, or 3. If you conquer Tortuga, that's the only one that is worth 3 points. These trading posts and turret sectors are each worth 1. When you take control of turret locations, you're going to gain a turret location token, which allows you to increase your maneuver. We'll get back to in a little bit. If you take over one of the trading post locations, you will also gain the trading post token, crypto, which is the money that you're going to spend throughout the game. Outside of that ring around Tortuga, you'll have additional sectors depending on the number of players that are playing the game. If it's a 4-player game, all these sectors are going to be in there. Otherwise, it will be random which sectors are not included. Controlling these sectors will give you 2 points when you conquer them. Each of these sections will have an asymmetric bonus that they're going to give.
You mentioned that you're going to gain those victory points, that influence when you control these. The victory points that come from the control token, you only have while you maintain control of it. Somebody else can come in later, pay a higher maneuver than my defense at the sector that I control. I will give them the control token, which is the victory point chit for that sector. The base ones, the trading posts and the turrets that are worth 1 point, that goes to them. If they take over the other sectors, then they're going to get those 2 victory points from me. It's a 4-point swing whenever you take that from someone.
As we start talking about crypto and maneuver cards, we should point out this game is most definitely a deck building game with some different mechanics that are involved in there. It has very much an area control mechanic in it, as well as influence over these different sectors.
So this is one of the things that I quite enjoyed about this game. Fan of deck builders, generally speaking.
Same.
Tortuga and those tiles that surround it, if your ship is on any of those, you can purchase cards from kind of a center row. This works like most deck builders do. You've got a lineup of cards, and there's a stack of them, 6 or 7 different kinds, but they're all the same. There were 1 or 2 cards that you could also purchase that were unique in and of themselves.
Right. Those Tortuga cards, they range in cost from 2 up to 10. If you spend 2, there's just 1 card. The hacker then goes into your discard pile. The hacker, when you play her, is worth 2 crypto. Just like any deck builder, you go to that general market, a little upgrade when you buy those cards, right? It's a little bit better than the cards you already have.
Right. And if you were to play the game solely in Tortuga or in those surrounding spots where you can buy those cards, I think you'd be pretty disappointed in the deck building because that's really all it is. You're just increasing your crypto generation and your maneuver generation. Where the game really takes off in terms of customizing your deck and being able to do really fun things is the fact that each one of those outlying sectors that gets put out on the board has its own unique deck of cards, and it has its own mini market. You have 2 of them that are showing at any given moment, and you can also spend your resources to cycle through. They're not big decks. Everyone should kind of know what's in them when the game starts. If you can generate the right resources, you can actually cycle through to the cards you want and pick them up. I really liked the depth that going out to those sectors and having different card options added to the deck building experience.
Each of those locations has 10 cards. So like you said, it's not a very big market, but you're talking that there's 40 additional cards, which provides a lot of replayability in my opinion. I mean, yeah, there's some repetitive cards in each of those locations, but how the game plays out and what cards you pick, like you said, you can cycle through those cards to get what you want. The cards in your hand are essentially going to have 2 icons on it. They're going to have maneuver icons and they're going to have crypto icons. And they may have some text in there as well that will allow for greater abilities on those cards, but it all comes down to those basic symbols, the maneuver and crypto. The crypto is used to buy cards. The maneuver is used for a couple of things. You can use one maneuver point to move from one sector to the adjacent sector, or you can use that maneuver as a kind of a military strength to challenge an opponent so you can attack their ship, or you can use it to try to conquer a sector. Each of the sectors have 6 individual strength values. When you conquer that, you'll begin at the lowest level, which is 3. Any of the sectors that are adjacent to Tortuga, the outside ones, begin at 5. Once you've conquered that location, gained that sector control token, you'll gain any of the location tokens, and then add those to your tableau. The turret location will add that maneuver icon, which will allow you to give you more military strength in overcoming the conquer value, or military strength when you're battling your opponent. Or you can get that crypto bonus, which will just give you an additional crypto to spend each turn. There's 3 of those locations that have the crypto, 3 of them that have the maneuver bonus. So it's possible you don't want to allow any one player to take too much of advantage of those location tokens.
So one of the other things during setup, depending on the number of players, on each sector, except for Tortuga, you're going to put a little mineral token. You can spend maneuver to pick up when you're on a location. One of those is available. And that is just a one-time use crypto that you can use to increase your buying power at some point in the game. One of the things I think Andy enjoyed about this game is at the start of the game, the very first thing you do as the first player is you're going to look through the ships, the captain's ships, and choose your ship. Each of the ships, they each have a card that goes into your starting deck, gives you a different ability. And so I know asymmetric powers is something that you're always talking about. These ones are pretty cool. Some really good bonuses.
I think they did a good job considering the fact that there are only 2 resources really in the game. Be able to get enough asymmetry with the ship cards was probably not the easiest thing to do, and I thought they did a great job with it. Were they balanced? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe have varying opinions on that. The ship that I used was pretty good, but I think it's very situational on each of the ships, at least some of them. There's some that are very straightforward. You just draw a card and you get a maneuver whenever you play it. I think that they maybe could have strengthened some of the ones that were a little bit weaker and made them a little bit better. I think there were definitely some outliers that maybe seemed to be a little bit better as far as their powers were concerned.
Yeah, the other thing is I didn't necessarily feel like any one of those ships gave you an asymmetric power that you were going to build an entire strategy around.
That's true.
When I look at asymmetric powers, that's what I really like to see. Okay, this faction or this card or whatever it is going to give me something that I can do that's unique, that I can develop a game around that the other players can't. This didn't necessarily do that, but they were still fun powers to have.
I'm kind of with you on that. On this last playthrough that we did, I was planning on doing that. I saw my ship. Okay, great. That's a strategy that I enjoy anyway. I'm going to focus and build mine around that. My ship allowed me to destroy a card in my hand, remove it from the game so that it wasn't clogging up my deck anymore. By the end of the game, I think you all had more cards removed from your deck than I did mine.
I think a lot of that attributed to one of my favorite mechanics that they include is that there's an automatic way to be able to cull cards out of your deck. You can spend 2 maneuver to trash any one card in your hand, which is really big. If you can do it early on, you can replace one of those single crypto cards with a double crypto card or even a triple crypto card.
I'm not sure if you noticed this, but it's actually, you don't destroy a card from your hand, you destroy a played card. So you get to play the card and then spin the maneuver to destroy it.
It is better. I'm right there with you, Nathan. This really excited me when I got the little player aid card and I saw that it just had a built-in way to trash or cull cards. That is oftentimes one of my biggest complaints when I play a deck builder is the inability to trash or get rid of cards. I don't know that you can call it a true deck builder if you're not able to customize and whittle cards out, formulate that deck to do what you want it to do. A lot of deck builders don't include that, and I love that this one was just built right into the cake.
You want to be able to manage that deck in a way more customized to my individual play and the cards that I've picked up, allowing me to gain a stronger military presence or a more economic presence where I can buy those cards or turn money into victory points, being able to have that as a base action that you can take on your turn was great.
Dave, one of the things that you did this last game that we played that I didn't do at all was to explore and capture the hunted creatures. And that is not something we've talked about yet, but during game setup, each one of those tiles, except I believe for the Tortuga tile, is going to get a little cardboard token. That token corresponds to a card that's in a creature's deck. One of the actions you can do is to peek at that tile to see what creature is there. And then you can go look at the card. And on that same turn, if you had the resources to do so, or on a future turn, you could then choose to hunt that creature, spend the requisite maneuver, and you get to pull that card out of the deck and then add it to your discard pile.
The hunt cards, 10 of those, just like any of the other decks, they range from easiest one to defeat. You have to have 3 maneuver to defeat. The toughest ones, you have to have 11 maneuver to capture. You're not defeating them, you're capturing them. They have abilities and resources on those cards. Each of these cards, when you play these cards, they're going to have the resources on them, but they're also going to have ability down at the very bottom of the card. When you play that card, it specifies in the rules, you have to immediately declare whether or not you're going to use the ability. You don't have to use it right then. You just have to declare if you're going to use it. You can play all your cards at once, declare, I'm going to use this ability, I'm not going to use this one, and then I'm going to use these other 2, whatever. As you take your turn, you use those abilities in whatever order you want. But those hunt cards, I liked those because they had some really cool abilities and good amount of resources on them. The other thing that's cool about them as a later action, if you have a hunt card in your hand, you can redeem a hunted creature card. If you have it in your hand, you can remove it from play, just like you would cull any card. Remove that hunted creature card from your deck, so you lose the ability to use it, but you gain the victory points that it is worth. One of the strategies that you can do is gain a bunch of these hunt cards, use them to your benefit, and then try and time it right to get rid of them in time to be the first to get to that 15-point total.
If somebody conquers Tortuga, triggers the game end, each other player is going to be able to take one more turn. However, those actions are limited. They can't conquer any more sectors, and they can't initiate any ship battles, primary ways to gain points. Being able to redeem those hunt cards is one of the few ways that you can gain additional points after that end game has been triggered.
There's one other card in your starting deck that we really haven't discussed. That's the booster card. I loved the booster card. That lets you move up to 3 spaces. It doesn't use any of your maneuver, so you can still use that maneuver for hunting creatures or conquering a location.
We also haven't talked about the fact that you can reserve a card on your turn. I actually utilized this a lot on our last play, which was really, really nice. One of the reasons important for me to be able to do that was my ship was far more powerful. My asymmetrical power of my ship was far more powerful when I had a discard pile. And inevitably, I drew it in my starting hand after I shuffled almost every time. That was one of the cards that I reserved quite often in the game, just so I could use that ability to, the greatest benefit I possibly could. That last round, that's why I was able to actually do that, was because I had a creature in my discard pile, had my ship in reserve, pulled my ship. It allowed me to draw a card from my discard pile, and that I was able to redeem that hunted creature card. Being able to reserve that and try to set yourself up for another round, for me, right up there with being able to cull a card. Because you could have just a horrible hand and just a bunch of starting cards. Maybe you can get rid of one of them, but being able to reserve a card that's really good that just doesn't fit with what you just drew can be awesome, because it can totally set you up for a great round. If you're trying to conquer Tortuga, you almost have to do that. It's not easy to conquer. You have 15 maneuver to do that. Hand size of 5, unless you have a lot of card draw, that's no easy feat.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. So I was the one that conquered Tortuga, and that's exactly how that played out. I went over to the fortress sector, and I picked up the orbital strike card worth 5 maneuver. When it cycled back into my hand, I used that reserve action to put it in my reserve pile. In the same turn that I reserved it, I went and planted my ship on Tortuga, hoping that I'd get the other 10 maneuver to conquer it, and it ended up working out for me. It's another one of those actions that I'm really impressed is just kind of built right into the cake. I like that.
You can only reserve 1 card. It costs you 2 crypto to do it. Any subsequent turn, you have the option at the beginning of your turn to draw that reserve card. If you don't want to draw it, you don't have to draw it. So if you hadn't gotten that hand that you wanted, you could have waited for another turn and left it in your reserve.
Yeah, without making it too overpowered, because you can only ever have one.
Unless you're Andy Poops. Some of the promo cards that we got allowed him to have 2 cards reserved at a time. One of the hunt cards that I had, and there are some of the cards that Andy was able to purchase at the research lab sector, allowed you to reserve a card as well. And our best guess at the interpretation of how those cards are supposed to be played is that they allow you to reserve additional cards.
Good to know.
I say our best guess because there were several things that we couldn't quite figure out by scouring the rule book or looking online.
A lot of the stuff was pretty ambiguous on exactly how it worked. Whether you just got to reserve a card and you didn't have to pay the cost, or then there was confusion because it was worded differently on one that was in your hand. Anyway, there was a lot of confusion. It would be nice if they came out with some clarifications on that.
So one action that we did glaze over, attack an enemy ship. So if I'm going to attack Andy, I'm going to go to the sector that Andy is in, going to announce that I'm going to attack Andy. After I do that, I'm going to put down a number of cards face down from my hand, and I will announce how many cards I'm putting down. At that point, Andy has the option to choose cards from his hand and play those cards face up as a defense. You'll also include any of those sector tokens that will increase the maneuver. I would reveal my cards, and we would count up my maneuver strength to Andy's maneuver strength, then determine the winner. If I have the most, I'm the winner. If we're tied, the ties would go to the defender. As an attacker, if I win, I get to take 1 influence token from Andy, providing that he has one. Then I also get to take 1 from the bank. Now, if I attack Andy in a location that he controls, I also get the advantage of taking over that location. I would then replace his defense marker by placing my defense marker on the next open spot, then allow me to claim that location, take the sector control token, sector bonus token. That could turn out to be a huge shift in points.
The one caveat to that is if you attack someone in a location that they control, they also get to add half of the sector's defense value to their total maneuver. The sectors in and around Tortuga start with a defense of 3. So the very first person to go and try and take that spot over is going to have to play 3 maneuver. And then they put their little turret marker on the 3. And then if somebody else wants to go and take control from that person, they look at that sector. The first one's 3, the next side is 4, the next side is 5. If you want to take control from me, you've got to pay 4 defense. Put your marker on the 4, and so that defense has gotten a little stronger. And then the only other way to increase the defense is through the reinforce action, which makes it so that you can spend crypto equal to the number of the defense that you want to raise it to.
Once you have that level set to 8, it doesn't mean it's safe. I can still come and take control of that and conquer that by having a maneuver count of 9. At that point, I would replace your marker with my marker, but still be at that 8 location. On those tiles that are closest to Tortuga, if you ever have 9 maneuver, you can go in and take over any one of those locations.
So you can all kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as a deck building and area control game goes, I think we all really enjoyed this. I had a good time playing it. Absolutely play it again. I think where there was a little bit of consternation was in how the game ends. If somebody can get to 15 points, they automatically win. If you can conquer Tortuga and you have 15 points, bearing in mind that you're going to pick up 3 in the process of conquering Tortuga, you also just immediately win. But if you conquer Tortuga and no one has 15 points, then everybody else is going to get a chance to play. However, being limited on not being able to attack sectors or other ships, I think made that feel a little flat for us during this last play.
Very much so. For me, anyways, Doug, it triggered the end game when you conquered Tortuga. So my plan was to come and defeat you and take a couple of your points and hopefully make that swing. I was looking forward to that shift. My deck was all ready to do that. And then at the end game, I couldn't do that. My end turn just really kind of fizzled. The end game experience for me was very flat. Leaves a bad taste in your mouth at that point.
Well, I think it could have been epic as far as that goes too, because Doug would have gotten the defense bonus from the planet, which to conquer Tortuga is 15. So he would have gotten half of that in a bonus to his defense. So once again, it would not have been easy to defeat Doug. The fact that he had that extra benefit, why not allow people to come in and try?
But on that same note, Andy, it also limits you so that we can't attack each other, or we can't try to conquer a location and take points that way. So it really comes down to that final round. You can redeem your hunt cards. Tortuga does offer the ability to, for 7 credits, buy 1 influence. And there are some cards that will allow you to gain some points. But other than that, there's really not much to do on that last turn. That last round is just a cleanup. It fizzles for me.
Yeah, and I'm with Andy. Let the game end with some epic space battles.
Absolutely.
I often balk at people ending games too soon. If you've listened to the podcast for long, you know my line. It's not a race for the galaxy. This was even worse than most races for the galaxy. Most of the time you can...
Because it was in space?
Yeah. Now, most of the time you can gauge that it's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like in Dominion, for example, keeping your eye on how many stacks are at 0, keeping an eye on the province pile.
Dave, if you were paying as close of attention to what Doug was doing to what I was doing and announcing what Doug was doing every single time he took a turn, you probably would have been aware of it.
This is true, actually.
Lesson learned, don't sit next to Dave, because he announces it to the entire table what you're doing every single turn.
Do your job, and I didn't know what Doug was doing.
It's not my job. Pay attention, don't announce it.
I was planning my turn during Doug's turn. You being right after me, I'd just taken my turn. I don't have to plan my turn yet. Anyway, ending when somebody happens to draw that much all at once, not really being able to see this is going to be happening. I was keeping an eye on everybody's victory point stack. I had also at that point forgotten that you could end it by taking Tortuga, so I wouldn't have thought about it anyway. But I was keeping an eye on everybody's victory point stacks, and the 3 of you guys were all within 2 of each other, 7, 8 point range. I was sitting at 1. I was just at the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to start taking control of some sectors. In turn or 2, I'm going to redeem some of my hunt cards. I took a sector from Andy, and Doug ended the game. And I was like, what? Dude, I don't... There needs to be a better, stronger word for this isn't a race for the galaxy.
Badong.
Like badong. I was going to say. Thanks, Nate. You're the best. Bad wrong. Or badong.
Well, I did think it was a race for the galaxy, so I ended it quick.
I think any game I play with Dave is a race for the galaxy.
One thing I would have liked to have seen as far as an improvement for this, the Tortuga cards, you have your basic ones that come out and then have some random ones. I know you get the random ones, outer tiles are random from the beginning, but I think it would have been more interesting future plays to have different combinations. And it seems to me like the replayability isn't super high because of that. There's not a lot of card combinations. Variability is very low.
You're talking like in Dominion, first thing you do is you shuffle that magic deck of happy cards, is what I always like to call them. Get 10 cards that who knows what they're going to be. Totally with you on that.
Which, once again, I mean, with so few resources, maybe that makes it a little bit too difficult to do. I don't know. There's tons of stuff you can do with the board as well to change things up and make it more interesting.
We played with the Kickstarter version. Kickstarter version also does include the Shipwreck Bay expansion, a couple more cards, and includes 2 more sectors that can be added in and randomized to give you some variety in those outside sectors. It also did include the expansion promo pack of status cards, which for 7 crypto, you could buy this card that is static. It stays in play. There's also an expansion, the Secret Agenda, which we didn't include in our last play, but Secret Agenda provides players the opportunity to have a focus or an agenda.
I think the Secret Agenda cards, Doug, would be something along more of the lines of what you were thinking with the asymmetrical starting powers, where going through those and reading through them, it seems like it kind of puts you on a trajectory for the game on what you're trying to accomplish. They're not super powerful. You might get 1 point out of it when you redeem it, but can put you on a path of what you're trying to do.
The next time we play it, let's throw those in there. I'd love that.
It's tough for us at this table because I don't think any of us love conflict. The last thing that I want to do in a game is attack Andy, because I know I'm going to get yelled at for another hour.
Just wait till this is over.
No, but I don't think any of us are super comfortable, except for maybe Doug, going and attacking another player.
True that.
And this game is definitely one that really pushes you to do that.
Especially at the end.
Absolutely. Unless you're going to make it a race for the galaxy and take over Tortuga, you're going to have to attack somebody if you want to get to that 15 points.
Which that's how our plays went last year. Fairly amicable at the beginning, and then it got cutthroat real fast. Battles and territories switching around. By the end of it, there was no friendship going on.
Now, I didn't notice when I first started buying the cards because I just happened to go to a section that I saw a card with a lot of resources on it across the board, and so I couldn't really read all the text on it until I purchased it. It was a card that it got better as I bought more cards from that deck. They were all going to give me bonuses when I attack a player. So it gives me the resources, but it gives me bonuses if I attack a player. And so I was like, golly, it really wants me to attack other people. Hard for me to do that.
Which I thought your comment was funny, Dave, because you're like, oh, my deck really wants me to attack other players. I'm like, well, you put the cards in there, Dave.
I don't think people fully understand the verbal tongue lashing that takes place when you decide to attack members of Meeple Nation. People around the table go from altar boys to space pirates real quick.
That's true.
Yeah, I think everybody's talking about you, Andy.
What are you talking about? I've got a halo on my head right now.
Held up by
altar
your
boy.
horns.
Altar boy, like he said.
I think we've summed up final thoughts, but let's go around. And Dave, let's begin with you. Your final thoughts of Tortuga 2199.
I really enjoyed the gameplay. I really enjoy the deck builder aspect of it. I wonder, one of the last things, Andy, you were talking about, most of the cards are static. There are those extras, and it would be great if they come out with more. If they come out with another expansion to add more possibilities with more cards. I could see myself getting bored with these cards with a lot of plays. Certainly get a bunch more plays with what we currently have and enjoyable plays.
As far as deck builders go, there were some strong elements, like we talked about, the card culling, being able to reserve a card. Getting things to where you can actually make things happen, that kind of the engine building aspect of it, I thought was very strong. I'm not a huge fan of direct conflict games for the most part. As far as that goes, didn't really do much for me with that. But I do like moving around in space. I think that's kind of cool. I like having to move around to different locations to actually buy your cards for a deck builder. I liked how interesting that was. For the most part, the gameplay was really cool. Getting maneuver was far more beneficial than getting crypto. If you don't do that by the end of the game, you suffer greatly for it.
I think this is a solid deck builder with a really fun theme. I do think that some of the wording on the cards and then some of the fiddliness with how the game ends keep this one back from being really great for me. Just as a player, and this is just an opinion thing, I also am not really big into direct player confrontation. If I'm going to play a deck builder that has sort of this exploration type element, I'd probably rather play something like Quest for El Dorado. That said, I still think that this had a lot to offer, and I wouldn't turn it down if you guys wanted to play it again. So solid and very good, just kind of being held back from greatness by a few little things.
I actually liked the game exploration. However, I feel I want more of that space. I want more places to explore. I want more places to be able to try to evade my enemies. But it is a pirate game, and it does try to force that conflict, and it does try to force those pirate traits. We're attacking other ships. We're trying to gain control. I think the game does that pretty good. I like the markets, being able to have the mini markets that are on the outside areas, the fringe markets that are on the outside, allowing you to have a little bit more variety in the market cards. But overall, I think just the fact that the board felt small, but if it added more, I think the game would go on way too long. It might be kind of in that sweet spot. It's going to take a far deeper exploration into the game, including some of those agenda cards to see how they play out. This is a game that maybe I put on a 10 for 10 to really get a full feel of the game, where strategy and the complexity of the game can really shine in repeated plays.
One last note for me. So I love pirate games, and unfortunately, this really didn't scratch the pirate itch for me. I don't know if it was just because it's not necessarily nautical, it's space themed. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was just the fact that conquering an area, but it doesn't really feel like I'm being very piratey about it. I'm not pillaging anything and pay my maneuver and I put a token on the board. I think it's lacking in theme as far as the pirate theme goes. The gameplay's fun, don't get me wrong. But as far as the connection between the gameplay and the theme, I felt there was a little bit of a disconnect.
I think you're right. I think the theme for this exists primarily in the artwork on the cards. I don't know that that translates into the mechanisms of the game.
It needs more than just the name Tortuga.
Right. But overall, I liked it. Like what Doug said, just a few minor things.
And that is Tortuga, $21.99. Until next time.
We'll see you. Well, you can't batten down those hatches, can you? We'll see you sealing those airlocks and fighting to conquer Tortuga. $21.99.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I hope that, like, while you were giving your last little thoughts, I sniffed my microphone. I hope it didn't pick up the sound.
As always, we want to thank you for listening.
Check out our website. We have all sorts of cool things there. Love those blogs. Get a deeper look into the writing side of Meeple Nation.
Join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. I look forward to seeing you there.
Follow us on Twitter at Meeple Nation. We also have Instagram.
Under the same name. We also want to thank our sponsor, GameToppersLLC.com.
We love their product, and they have so much goodness out there.
And we also want to thank Braiding Detergent for our music.
Or anything, but it's tough for.
It's cut out.
What?
You cut out.
It's because I have no listening. I think it cut out again there, didn't it?
Sure did. Try it again.
No,
Go to our website, MeepleNation.com. Go to our website, MeepleNation. Yeah, shut up, Dave.
could you feel my eyes right then?
Yeah. I kept wanting to say Gmail.
When's this episode airing? It's definitely after Dallas, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't go back in
It took me a
time to
minute.
release an episode.
Hey, I didn't get to go to that Dallas, okay? That whole thing doesn't even really exist to me.